Hello friends, we are in week 7 of our spiritual practices journey this fall, and this week is stewardship. That sounds sometimes like a bit of a funny word and maybe a churchy word to you, but here is the definition of stewardship. Stewardship is the voluntary and generous offering of God's gifts of resources, time, talents, and treasure for the benefit and the love of God and others. It's the generous offering of the resources, the time, talent, and treasure that God has given us, giving those things for the benefit of God and for others. It's living with an awareness that really nothing is our own, that everything is God's, and we are only and simply stewards or managers of it. Psalm 24:1 says this: "The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the world and all those who dwell therein." We are His. The gifts and the blessings that He has given are His. The resources He gives are His. We are the stewards. He has entrusted these things to us. Right? That we hear this in our church heritage, in some of the foundations of our faith, that in life and in death we belong to Him. That the chief end of humankind is to glorify God and enjoy Him forever. That it all begins with God, it ends with God, it's all for God. This is what it means to steward, to manage the time, talents, and treasure that God has given to us. You see, in the Old Testament, there was a tabernacle and there was a temple, and it was the place where God dwelled. It was God's presence among the people of the earth. And in the New Testament, we learn, and in fact 2 weeks ago in Ephesians 2, we talked about it, that we are all one. This dividing wall has been broken down, and that we are all being built up together into a spiritual house, into a holy temple unto the Lord. So we each have our part, friends. You matter. Your resources matter. Your time matters. The talents, the spiritual gifts, the abilities, and the capacity that God has given matters. And the church needs you. You see, if we are the temple, this spiritual house being built up, you have a part. You're a brick in this building that's being built to show the world that they might know who God is, that they might know that they are loved, that they might know that Christ came for them, that they might be restored and redeemed and renewed, that the world might know. And right now, the way God has allowed it, the way He has chosen and invited us and called us to be a part of the church, is to manage and share the resources that He's given to us, to return back to Him that which is rightfully His. As I thought about it this week, I thought, you know what? Stewardship really is just gratitude. In week 3, we practiced gratitude, but how might we think about it as it just being a life of thankfulness and gratitude to the Lord for the ways in which He has worked, that we might give back to Him that the world may know. Stewardship not only is living with gratitude, but stewardship is living intentionally. It's the intentional use and choice to use our time and talent and treasures for the kingdom. And so let's take a quick look at these 3 things. Time. Psalm 31 says, "I trust in you, O Lord. My times are in your hand." That right, all the time that we have comes from His hand. It's in His hand. So how are we utilizing our time that the world may know who God is? Paul, in fact, in Ephesians 5, that's coming in our sermon series, says, "Redeem the time, for the days are evil." Redeem the time. Redeem means to buy back. So how do you buy back time? Time often feels like sand in an hourglass. And in fact, it reminds me of the soap opera Days of Our Lives, which I used to watch and I no longer watch. Like I gave that up after college. But Like sands through the hourglass, so are the days of our lives. It's like sand. We can't hold it in our hands. It falls through the cracks between our fingers. So how do we buy back time? Well, friends, I think the way we can buy back time is by investing time. Because when we invest our time in church in ways that we serve, when we invest our time loving others, discipling others, mentoring others, using our time, giving it back to God for Him to use it as He wishes, we actually are investing in eternity. We can buy back time. We can redeem time because people's souls and people's lives are eternal. So how might we steward our time? By redeeming it, buying it back, and investing it in eternal ways for the kingdom and for the people that are made in God's image, that they might know Him. Our talents. When we come into relationship with Christ, we are given spiritual gifts, something unique to us, something that interacts with our passion, things that we're passionate about in our personality. So we have these talents that God asks that we use to further His kingdom. And if we're being built into this house, we each have our part. Like I said, you're important. Nobody can play your part but you. So God is inviting you to steward your spiritual gifts, to steward your time, to manage it in ways by giving it back to God. And then our treasure, our money, our resources. That's often how we talk about stewardship, is in our money. Jesus in Matthew 6 tells us that where our treasure is, there will our heart be also. Right? And that's a little sobering. Like where we invest our money tells us where our heart is. And so what is the call with our money? Jesus says a lot about money, and there's a lot of teaching out there about that, and I don't want to spend a ton of time on that. But how we invest our money tells us where our heart is. And so I invite you to take a look at that this week. Not only stewarding your money, but your talents and your time, all those things together, giving those back to God for the sole purpose that the world may know. And Jesus spoke about this several times in the Gospel of John, and I wanted to share just a few verses for you, the ways in which I think Jesus stewarded his time in the mission of God, his talents, and he had many, for goodness sakes. He healed and he raised people from the dead, but how he lived this way as well. People wanted to debate one day about a man who was blind, and they wanted to know who sinned, his parents or him. But Jesus redirected the conversation, and this is what he said. He said, we must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. The night is coming when no one can work. Jesus said, I don't want to debate all this stuff. Like, there's work to do. There's people that need to know who I am. And I think it's the same for us. The days are dark. The night is coming. In some ways, it feels like in this season, there's just a shadow that hovers over. But the longer we wait, right, we're wasting time. We're not redeeming the time. So how might we work the works of God by stewarding our time, talents, and treasure? Because the days are dark. Jesus says this in John 4, when the disciples are saying, Jesus, but you need to eat. And he says this, my food is to do the will of him who sent me and to accomplish his work. Jesus stayed on mission. Jesus lived intentionally. Out of gratitude, he did the will of his Father. And in John 14, he says, I do as the Father has commanded me, so that the world may know that I love the Father. And then he says, rise. This is teaching to the disciples when he was about to depart before he was betrayed and went to the cross. But he was setting an example that he was managing and stewarding his time and talents and treasure, that the world might know that the Father has loved him, and in fact that he loved the Father. And then he says to the disciples, rise, let's go. And I think that's our call. We invest, we steward so that the world may know. So we got to get up and we got to be intentional. We got to invest and live intentionally. And in John 17, Jesus says, I have glorified you, having accomplished the work that you gave me to do, the high priestly prayer. saying, I've done what you've called me to do, God. And so how might God be calling you to steward well, to invest your time, talents, and treasure for the kingdom that the world may know? Because friends, we're it. We are the church. And the kingdom is ours. And we want to share the kingdom with others. And we can't do that unless each of us does our part. We're needed. You're needed. You and I, we're all needed to be the church. And so I think it's all summed up in this question. Am I doing all that I can do with all I have been given? That's the essential question of stewardship. Am I doing all that I can with all that I've been given? So friends, I invite you to wrestle with that question as you engage the spiritual practice this week of stewardship. May the Lord bless you and keep you.